Who is this stupid God? Stupido talaga itong kung ganun. You created something perfect, and then you think of an event that would tempt and destroy the quality of your work.
Those are the remarks made on Friday, June 22nd, that had a lot of people up in arms, and criticisms keep on coming for President Duterte. But the president is not apologizing. Here's his statement on Thursday, June 28th.
Sir, some are saying you should apologize for the comment.
No, I will not do that. Okay. Definitely. Not in a million years. You know, God is personal. It is not formed by textbooks. You nurture God as your faith based on the values that you get from life early on from your parents. That is how you conceive God to be. So, if you use God as a transmission sa ano ninyo, other sectors of society, then you invite criticism. You say that in the name of God, you say that's not allowed by God. If you use it as in a transmission of messages,
Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. This is On the Record. Our guests for this episode, Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines spokesperson, Father Jerome Ceciliano, and former presidential spokesperson, now Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Ernesto Abella. Mr. Abella is also a member of Malacanang's four-man team tasked to hold dialogues with church leaders. So speaking of church leaders, and good evening to the both of you, Yusek Abella and Father Ceciliano. Well, speaking of dialogue, so yesterday there was one with the PCC.
There was one.
Yes, and you were there, sir,
yes,
naturally. No. In the first place, how long did it last? An hour, 2 hours?
Approximately about an hour plus.
An hour, and it was a pleasant exchange.
It was. I think it was necessary, and we also had to be, to go into some. We had to bring in a bigger context.
The bigger context.
The bigger
Okay,
context.
but before we go to that bigger context, how did you explain the president's tirades? Because I mean, Harry Roque was saying it is because of the sexual abuse controversy that the president went through.
Well, siguro, maybe just to make it clear, let me be clear first. Let's begin with the obvious, Number one, the president himself is spiritual, what we'd call spiritual, but not religious. That is quite obvious.
Yeah. So this is what you, because my question po is, how did you explain the president's tirades to the PCEC yesterday?
Yes.
Okay.
He is spiritual, but not religious, and he is also a
spiritual, not religious,
spiritual,
meaning not very, hindi ritual ang ganun ba yun?
Ano siya,
doesn't really attend
if you
mass?
listen to him, he has a spiritual experience. Meron siyang personal experience ng Diyos. Kaya lang, hindi siya sumusunod dun sa mga pamaraan, na kahit na kinalakihan niya. So he seems to be quite contrary to that.
Okay, and then?
Pangalawa, yung sinasabi ko na he's very sensitive to injustice. He's very sensitive to injustice. And also, on the other hand, he's also very compassionate, which tells us two things about him. Number one, meron siyang sense of right and wrong. At pangalawa, meron siyang spirituality na in-express niya in his day-to-day life. Yung pangatlo naman is yung point na pare-pareho naman tayong hinahanap whether you're in politics or in church. We seem to be seeking something, a similar thing. We have a convergence point. Like for example, he's looking for a comfortable life for all, a progressive Philippines, and the church itself is looking for the will of God to be done on earth as it is in heaven, parang ganon. And so, on the other hand, going back, we have to understand saan siya nanggagaling. He grew up in a Catholic family. He went to Catholic schools. He had a Catholic catechism. And then he was also, we need to bring back, we need to focus back on the fact that he was also sexually molested as a minor, and that seems to be the elephant in the room. Now we all seem to be avoiding On the other hand, ba't siya ganyan? Apparently, that is really and without really, and in fact, he has already exposed who he is exposed. So the thing, I suppose, that one wonders is, having already disclosed the name of the perpetrator, it seems apparently that it hasn't been attended to yet.
Hasn't been attended to.
It hasn't been addressed. It hasn't.
Well, the priest is dead, right?
The priest is dead, yes, but he still belongs to an organization that's the oldest Christian organization in the world. So parang.
So kumbaga, no reparations have been made, no apology, etc.
Hindi ba napansin mo, like, for example, let me just bring, if you don't mind. Let me, for example, he's very sensitive not to injustice, hindi ba? He will bring up, for example, katulad nung he called out the US, right, on the Buddha Who, no? And then the Balangiga Bells, no? And even President Obama, because he felt he was being lectured down to, he was lectured at. And yet, he feels that, how can you have moral ascendancy over me when hindi nyo naman inaayos yung pagkakamali sa akin personally.
Parang what right have you to throw stones at me when you yourself, etc. But anyway, sir, we don't want to go off course a bit too much, no? So, and that is how you explain the president's tirades to the PCEC yesterday. Yes. Did you, because after that meeting, Bishop Tindero, in an interview, was saying that merong proposal na lumabas, a washing of the feet. Did that come, that was their idea, the PCEC's idea? Did that come from your committee?
Well, actually, it's something that, after I explained this matter to them, I went on to say that, hindi maghihilom yung sugat until there is some sort of until there's a reaching out. Let me just explain, if you don't mind. In the past, because we know, of course, that, and this is no offense, just speaking about it objectively, no references to anything. For example, the same priest went on to back to the US and he continued to do the same thing. But eventually, cases were brought against him, and that they had to apparently pay a large amount of money. He's not, the president's not looking for that settlement. But if you go by what he says in the past, what he wants really is an admission, is
an admission from the Jesuits, because we're talking about the American Jesuit.
From the
church, okay.
From the Jesuits, from the church.
So, paano lumabas yung washing of the feet?
Well, I propose that it's something symbolic.
The proposal came from you.
Well, I mentioned it actually, and they picked up on it. And
you mentioned the washing of the feet, or that was among the things you mentioned?
That was a one symbol that I mentioned, but of course it was picked up on, and I was quite surprised that they actually,
Well, kasi if you're part of a committee that represents Malacanang, so syempre they take that as government policy. Parang it's an official. It sounded like an official proposal.
It was first and foremost, it was a dialogue.
Yes. So but what I mean is yung proposal pala na yon galing sa inyo, and it was
but it was the proposal that specifically so much, it was that some form of symbol should be.
Okay, we're going to go back to the sexual abuse, the clergy abuse issue in a little bit, little later on the show. But first, I wanted to ask Father Ceciliano here, who's speaking for the CBCP, no? Before you tell us what you think of that idea, that proposal, na mag-washing of the feet, can you explain first to our viewers, ano ba tong Lenten ritual? Everybody knows, Christ washed the feet of his disciples, but tell us the symbolism and why it's so important for Lent.
Well, number one, ginagawa yan tuwing Monday, Thursday in the afternoon. So there's a ritual that the priest washes the feet of the apostles, the ones chosen by the parish priest or any member of the community, a committee, para mag-represent bilang mga apostol.
And it is a ritual, Father, but what is it supposed to mean?
Well, number one,
ano yung symbolism
is humility. The humility of Christ.
Ng Christ, of the Christ.
So, ang sinasabi dito, hindi naman ako naparito para paglingkuran ninyo, kundi maglilingkod ako sa inyo, magmahalan kayo. So, yun ang ibig sabihin nun. Ng ginagawa na washing of the feet.
Okay. So, what do you think of this suggestion that came out, rather innocently, the way the dialogue had gone yesterday between the Malacanang Committee and yung PCEC bishop? So, what do you think of this suggestion now, and how would the CBCP look at this? Because apparently it's not going to be PCEC bishops, no? It's going to be, if this were to happen, then it would be Catholic church leaders.
Well, for one, Pia, we haven't talked yet, formal talk as far as dialogue is concerned. Ano. Sila nag-usap na, no? Meron ng dialogue. Kami kanina ni Mr. Boy Saicon.
Yeah,
Pero ito no, preliminaries
preliminary,
lang.
oo. Dahil ang pinag-uusapan nyo ay...
Meron pinag-usapan namin doon, just feeling each other, expressing our sentiments. Katulad ng maraming Katoliko, katulad ng maraming Pilipino. Of course, nasaktan din yung simbahan dito.
Yeah. Who reached out to who?
Well, it was Boy Saicon who called me. And
Okay,
then,
okay.
so
Wait, before we go further on yung initial usapan nyo ni Boy Saicon, what do you, well, since wala pa namang position ng CBCP, hindi pa naman pinag-uusapan talaga, what do you think personally of that? A washing of the feet of President Duterte to sort of symbolize reparations and apology of sorts.
Pero bago ko sagutin yan,
Yes.
gusto ko muna magbigay ng points dito. Unang-una, yung sinasabi ni Yusa kanina, I'm still at a loss kung paano i-bridge yung connection ng, kumbaga, pangmamolestya at saka pag-criticize mo sa Diyos. But it's one thing to criticize a priest. But then you said something against God, well, that's another matter.
Yeah.
So okay lang na sa amin kung baga, banatan mo kami, halimbawa yung mga pare, i-criticize mo yan. Pero magsalita ka na laban sa Diyos, medyo offensive talaga yon. So kaya nga tinitingnan ko yung connection, So bakit mo binabanatan mo na nga yung pare, ba't dinadamay pa yung Diyos? Di ba parang yun ang personal ko dito, reflection,
Yeah, we'll go back to that point in a bit, and I wanted to ask you about the term blasphemy in a bit. But tell me first, so itong washing of the feet, if you say na paano mo naman na-connect yung galit mo dun sa pare na yon, dun sa galit mo sa Diyos at nasabi mo yan.
Yes. So yun nga, bibigyan natin ng kumbaga ay focus dito yung washing of the feet. Washing of the feet is all about a humble servant. You're humbling yourself in front of your so-called collaborators, mga apostles yan, yung unang-unang ginawa niya. So, rich in symbolisms, ritual yan. Pero but more than that siguro, wag na muna yung ritual, Marami muna tayo dapat ng mga practical, ng mga pamamaraan na dapat gawin. Halimbawa, iron out natin, daming differences
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
kahit na mag-ritual tayo dito, kung yung mga differences natin, hindi naman din natin naaayos, di ba? Hindi naging malinaw kung paano tayo dito magtutulungan, mag-collaborate. Yung ritual na yun, it means nothing.
Yeah. It can
Parang
come later once you have this long
parang personal
dialogue.
na parang para sa akin na personal yan, kung hindi pa naaayos to, if the premises are not yet there and then you go to the conclusion, parang sa akin ganun yun conclusion na lang yun.
Yeah.
O baka yun ang gawin natin sa huli.
Okay, like I was saying, we'll tackle the issue of clergy abuse. We'll tackle the issue of how, like you were saying, how you get from criticizing a priest and being angry at a priest and criticizing God and calling him stupid to, because some people in social media and in conversations, a lot of them would say, this is calling the president's remarks blasphemy. But before anything else, I wanted Father Ceciliano here to define blasphemy for us. But after the break lang po, Father, we just need to take a very short break. Plenty to talk about. Stay tuned for that. You're watching On the Record. Welcome back. This is On the Record. Still with us, CBCP spokesperson Father Jerome Ceciliano and former presidential spokesperson, now Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Ernie Abella, who is also a member of that Malacanang committee that's tasked to dialogue with different church leaders. But the hanging question before we went to break is, please define blasphemy muna for us, because that is how some people see the president's remarks.
So let's not be too technical or theological para mas maintindihan nila. Well, it's an act of contempt against a God, a deity. Ganun lang yun. Disrespect.
Yeah.
Yan ang
Say,
blasphemy.
how is it blasphemy? What words are used na pwede kang pagsabihan na that's blasphemous?
Well, the word is stupid.
Stupid.
The word is stupid.
Okay.
Because that's an utter lack of disrespect. Lack of respect, rather.
Okay. And when someone, well, a Catholic, for example, ako, magsabi ako ng something blasphemous, what is the, hindi naman punishment, what is the sanction, the penalty, what is it that I must do? Ganon.
Well, we consider that a mortal sin. And then you just go to confession. And then it's up to the priest to give you the penance, and then after that, the absolution. Ganun lang naman kasimple yun. But of course, God is somebody, hindi nothing,
Hindi,
supernatural yan, And then, it is our faith that tells us that this God is the creator of all things, and that He is the author of everything, even our riches. He gave this to us. So, and then for you to say that God is stupid just because of that particular event in the Bible that we don't really understand that much.
Oo. Even if he lumps yung what he perceives as sins of the Catholic Church together with yung galit niya sa Diyos at yung galit niya doon sa pare.
Well,
Blasphemous pa rin yun.
Well, you know, Pia, yung mga tirades niya against the priests, bishops, hindi naman blasphemous yan. At a lack of disrespect lang din sa isang tao na hindi niya type siguro.
Yeah.
Okay, ni-criticize kasi siya, buweltahan niya. Okay, gano'n na lang yun.
Yeah.
So, pero yung tipong sabi ko nga dito, okay na nag-criticize mo na yung pare, yung obispo eh.
Oo.
Pero ba't mo naman pati yung Diyos pagdidiskitahan mo pa, no?
Yeah.
Ayun lang naman ang akin. Sabi ko, I don't see the connection of being molested. And then, Yusek was telling us a while ago, no, that parang hindi pa ino-own ng simbahan, Parang wala ditong tinatawag na accountability yung simbahan. Well, I don't to the particular case, Yusek, But then, if you're going to look at these cases, especially involving priests, the clergy for that matter, lahat naman ito ina-address ngayon ng simbahan
Right.
But not to him.
Right. Oo. We're talking specifically about that case of that
Kaya nga
Jesuit
sinabi ko
priest.
kanina,
Oo. Yeah.
But the priest is dead, and I don't know he's
Yeah.
going to,
We'll go into more
Okay.
details in just a bit because we need
Yes, yes.
to settle that also. Pero yung kanina nga, so sabi nyo, Father Jerome, na nag-usap na kayo kanina ni Boy Saicon. Siyempre, yung isang pinag-usapan nito. So, kailan ang meeting ng CBCP at nitong committee?
Merong plenary assembly this coming July 7, 8, 9. So, we're
A plenary,
thinking
of course, ito yung lahat ng mga obispo,
all the bishops will be descending to Manila to have a meeting dito yan sa Pius, sa UN Avenue. And then, they're going to talk about some issues in the church, in society, perhaps. And then, maybe they're also going to finalize if they are receptive of the idea that the church and the government,
Yeah. And at the end of every plenary, there is always a statement, right, that the bishops come up with?
Well, usually they do that. But there were plenary assemblies in the past that they didn't issue a letter.
Okay. So, are we seeing a meeting of the CBCP after that, CBCP and the committee after that plenary?
Well, that's the ideal target, because this offer of a dialogue needs to be talked about also.
Yeah.
Because the CBCP is a collegial body. It's not going to be a decision of the president, the vice president, or the officers. It's going to be the decision of the whole conference, meaning to say the bishops.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, you're going to talk about the possibility of sitting down with this committee on July 7 and 8 na.
Yes.
Pag magkasama na. Pero ngayon pa lang, we have no idea.
Meron, sasabihin ko na, the church is open to the dialogue.
Okay.
The church is open.
However, you do want some talking points.
Dapat there should be talking points, clear talking points that extend beyond this issue of the president calling God stupid.
Yeah. Well, but Harry Roque was saying the other day that it is the committee and the different church groups that will decide together kung ano man yung pag-uusapan.
Well, I think unahin na lang muna yung kanya-kanyang church groups, Mas maganda siguro yon, Yusek, So maybe they can meet with the evangelicals, they can meet with some other church groups or religious sects, and then they meet with us.
Okay.
And then saka natin pag-usapan kung ano bang makabubuti kasi magkakaiba din yan
Oo. Are there certain things that should be off the table, or you want what exactly? Like, you want specific guidelines? Like, for example, if they say, pag-usapan natin yung kaso ni ng paring yon ng abuso kay President Duterte.
Well, this is coming from me, Personal ko lang ito, Pia, Ang pwedeng specific talking point dito is nangyayari lagi itong kumbaga criticisms. 'Di ba? Anong gagawin natin dito? Kasi may ginagawa kayong halimbawa sa gobyerno. Tapos kapag nakita halimbawa ng simbahan na mukha yatang hindi akma, ayon doon sa standard ng simbahan. O nakikita nila mukhang hindi nakakatulong sa Pilipino, sa mga Pilipino.
Yeah.
So anong gagawin natin? Magbabangay ba tayo sa media? O meron na lang tayong communication lines? Na pag ganito, meron kaming sasabihin, mag-usap na lang tayo para i-address natin yung issue. Mga ganung bagay. Ano?
Yeah, okay. Well, if, since kanina na-bring up paulit-ulit na, itong kaso ni President Duterte, that apparently he probably never complained about to church authorities in the past, and I am presuming that that is the case. But the priest, at least in several media accounts, apparently the priest had been taken to task for other cases that had happened afterwards. What happens then? No? Paano ngayon yung never mind if it was President Duterte, if it was anybody else, because not everybody who goes through that complains, right? So how does it?
So this is the process. Number one, if the church receives a complaint, the church will investigate. Two things. Pwedeng yung mag-file yung victim, talaga sa civil courts ng case. And then, yung simbahan naman, hayaan naman yun magpatuloy yung process na yun sa civil courts And then the church will also continue to conduct its own investigation. If it is found out na ganun nga talaga yung ginawa ng tao, guilty yung pare, meron siyang minolest, meron siyang ginamit or whatever. Defrack yan tanggal kagad yan sa pagkapare.
Paalisin.
Paalisin ka na.
Okay.
Ganun na ngayon. Yung iba naman, may mga cases, kasi may mga circumstances yan Hindi natin alam, may mga mitigating circumstances. Baka yung iba, pag-undergo muna ng process, baka ma-reform pa.
Yeah. But it is only the recent last few years that the church has become more open to this,
During
right?
the papacy of Pope Benedict XVI, the advent of the sexual misconduct cases in Boston, talagang naging stricto dito yung simbahan pati nga yung admission ngayon sa seminaries Kung meron ka lang homosexual tendencies, baka hindi ka natanggapin kagad sa seminary ngayon. So that's how strict they are, because the church wants to respond to all this goings on.
All right, we have 7 minutes before the end of the show, but we need to take a very short break. This is On the Record.
Para sa akin, kung presidente ka, dapat maingat ka sa pagsasalita kasi may kanya-kanya tayong paniniwala So, baka nakaka-offend siya sa ibang grupo na naniniwala sa tulad natin, mga Kristiyano. So, offending sa atin yun.
Masakit isipin na presidente yung nagsabi nun. Tas parang sa ngayon, parang nawawala yung tiwala ko sa kanya.
Hindi po, kasi po siya po yung namumuno po ikaw na nagtuturo sa iba, ba't di mo tinuturan yung sarili? Di ba po sabi po sa Biblia? Siya po yung presidente, dapat siya po yung maging model po natin.
Nasa kanya na yun So, hindi mo naman kailangan pakialaman naman. Nasa ating Pangulo na yan. Kaya, kung ano man sabihin niya, okay na lang po.
If yun yung paniniwala niya, okay siguro. Pero dapat hindi na nawawala yung respect knowing na marami tayong religion dito sa Philippines. So dapat i-respect niya, lalo na yung mga na may naniniwala, yung may mga religion.
Welcome back. You're still on the record. I wish we had more time. We only have 3 minutes daw, pero baka naman papayag ang Diyos. But anyway, okay, so meron pa kayong sasabihin, Father Jerome, tungkol sa usapan nyo ni Boy Saicon kanina. Because there is that invitation for the President to go to yung tinatawag na Pope's Day, bukas sana.
Bukas, So, according to Boy Saicon, sabi niya, papuntay mo si Presidente. Kasi para naman ipakita niya
Boy Saicon is talking to who?
To Bongo.
Okay.
To Bongo. Papuntay mo si Presidente, paki-remind sa kanya. Kasi pakita naman siya ng humility, yung sincerity din.
Parang reaching out. Meeting you halfway through. Ganun. So, ano daw sabi ni Bong?
Well, sabi naman ni Boy sa akin kanina, mukhang positive naman.
Okay. Pero wala tayong balita.
I don't know. Kasi nag-meeting kami kanina, 1 o'clock pa
okay. Di ba kami text dyan si Bongo? Wala? Okay. But anyway, okay. So, yung meeting ng CBCP, July 7-9, after that perhaps, yung itong clergy abuse and all these, the way people talk about God. I'm trying to squeeze everything in already, let's talk about the Bible, on which the President laid his hand. and solemnly swore to uphold the Constitution. He ends with "So help me God." No, a lot of people were saying that. Well, Harry, for one, Harry Roque was saying that. No, sorry, Harry Roque, or was it Sal Panelo, who was saying that ang pinag-uusapan din yung creation story, etc. And that, you know, that some people have been saying, even on social media, na paano yun yung creation story? May similarities din, may parallelisms din sa Quran, for example. No? So, how do we explain this?
Are you asking about the,
Yes.
the creation stories?
Yes.
The creation stories are basically a way of explaining our existence and all that. Specifically in the Hebrew experience, na iisa ang Diyos. But I think it's more than this is more than just a theological issue. This is a pastoral issue that has to be addressed that way.
Pastoral meaning?
It's a pastoral issue. Hindi siya away ng ano eh. Obviously, malalim yung kanyang pinaghuhugutan. Ang kanya kasi, meron talaga siyang offense. And so, I believe that at this stage, we need to just go just a little bit beyond, and just beyond sinong tama, sino mali. But at this stage, if we balikan natin kung gusto talaga natin maghilom yung sugat, then there should be some reaching out.
But do you agree that it is all right for the president to speak that way?
For the what?
For the president to speak that way?
All I can say is this, that he's expressing something
May pinanggagalingan.
May pinanggagalingan.
Okay. We're going to wrap up, but you know, Cardinal Chito Tagle said it so well, remain calm, respect, calling for respect. And he's also saying questioning God is not new. Back in college, I went to Ateneo, we had philosophy and theology, and many of these subjects taught by the Jesuits themselves, where we questioned many things, including God, existence, faith, etc. And even, and then it's interesting na the president himself tonight said God is personal, faith is personal. Maybe that's why it hit a chord, with a lot of people, because you're talking about God, right?
But may I just interject? Alam mo, I'd just like to quote a little bit from what Pope Francis said. Never again should we ignore the complaints and the cries of those who have been sexually abused. And so maybe that's it. Diyan ko lang binabalik. Wala po tayong away. Wala tayong away na ganyan. Pero ang sinasabi lang po natin, may pinanggagalingan siya. Obviously, there's a lot of emotions there. Yun po.
Okay.
Well, for one, I'd like to emphasize is also the issue of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church is being addressed. And we are not shy about that. Ang dami-dami ng mga pangyayari talaga naman na tinanggap namin At yung iba nga talaga na naparusahan, yung iba talaga napaalis na. So we don't have quarrel with that. Yung sasabihin sa amin na meron kayong ganitong mga issue Accept that.
Siguro po,
tanggap naman natin yun.
Ang pinangagalingan po siguro ng Presidente is, parang wala kayo, kung ganito naman yung situation, hindi niya naman isinatama, parang nawawala yung moral ascendancy ng Iglesia na magsalita sa kanya. So yun po siguro, ganun lang po siguro talaga yun, na hinahanap niya na magkaroon po tayo ng leveling.
Yeah, okay. So as far as you're concerned, dapat ang dialogue will just be about that particular sexual abuse
I would say
story.
that
Because
is where it
a lot of people have been saying, pag-usapan na rin natin yung mga abuses ng simbahan, meron pa taxation ng simbahan, kung ano-ano. Lahat ng issue laban sa Catholic Church,
hindi naman po
gusto na raw pag-usapan.
Ang pagkagalingan po siguro talaga, yung yung hugot niya, kung saan siya nagagaling.
Alright.
Ito naman din, if we're going to focus merely on that, sexual abuse, baka naman masyado naging personal yung issue.
Okay.
But this issue is not a personal issue. It's a public issue. You malign God. Ito pa nga, you were talking about the statement of Cardinal Tagle. So, sinabi niya na marami nagko-question Pero yung ginawa ng Pangulo, hindi pagko-question It's maligning God, calling God stupid. Hindi pagko-question yun Questioning is one thing, and maligning, criticizing, and then blaspheming is another thing.
All right. We have to end this right now or else maraming magagalit. Thank you for joining us here on the record. Thank you to our guests, Father Jerome Ceciliano of CBCP, and si Pastor Yusek, Ernie Abella. Salamat po. Thank you for joining us here on the record. I'm Pia Hontiveros.